I remember him saying to me very early on in the programme that there were three things that were absolutely sacrosanct. One was the stainless steel body, the other was the rear engine, and the third were the gull-wing doors.
DeLorean told them he'd build a factory from scratch in a muddy bog on the outskirts of the city, as in Dunmurry,
in Belfast,
a site sandwiched between Protestant and Republican neighbourhoods. He'd deliver the car to market in just 2 years. Wanting his car to be as sharp to drive as it was to look at, DeLorean turned Formula One Constructors Champion Colin Chapman. The superstar celebrating the Big 4-0 is the unmistakable, the timeless DMC DeLorean.
Yes, it was 4 decades ago, back in 1981, that this stainless steel wedge arrived back from the future. It would, of course, become the greatest movie car of all time, but not even Hollywood could have dreamed up the story of its creation.
That man was John Zachary DeLorean, a genius engineer born and raised in Detroit. Working at General Motors in the 1950s, he would go on to develop Pontiac's legendary GTO. This was the man that arguably invented the muscle car. And in a world of grey suits, DeLorean was a sharp-dressing, swaggering playboy. He hung out with the stars, he married models, he even treated himself to a brand new chin.
Probably to be successful as an executive, you have to have a certain amount of ego.
That ego, though, didn't sit well with the buttoned-up world of boardroom bureaucracy. DeLorean wanted more.
So, in the 70s, he stomped off to form his own car company, one with a grand vision to create an affordable, exciting and ethical sports car.
He wanted a car that was striking. I remember him saying to me very early on in the programme that there were three things that were absolutely sacrosanct. One was the stainless steel body, the other was the rear engine, and the third were the gull-wing doors.
To sort the styling, in 1975, DeLorean turned to the legendary designer behind some of the most beautiful Ferraris and Maseratis ever made, Giorgetto Giugiaro. DeLorean wanted his car to look like nothing that had gone before. Suffice to say, Giugiaro obliged. And all DeLorean needed now was somewhere to build it.
Scouring the globe for juicy tax breaks, he almost did a deal in Puerto Rico, but he ended up on the other side of the Atlantic, here in Belfast.
In the late 70s, Belfast was in the grip of sectarian violence. The Labour government of the day reckoned that creating jobs was key to peace, so DeLorean was welcomed with open arms.
You know, there's complete euphoria about this factory, and nearly every household there's an application form.
Ever the optimist, DeLorean told them he'd build a factory from scratch in a muddy bog on the outskirts of the city, and that he'd deliver the car to market in just 2 years.
It was an insane time frame. Getting a car from concept to the road normally takes about 5 years, and that's assuming you've got a functioning factory and a trained workforce. DeLorean had neither.
What's more, that muddy bog that the factory was to be built on was in Dunmurry, a site sandwiched between Protestant and Republican neighbourhoods.
We adopted a positive discrimination policy to make sure that we got a 50-50 workforce, and we had a workforce that worked together alongside each other. There was not one iota of problem inside the plant.
So, improbably, the factory, which is still here, came together with barely a hitch. The problem was, the car was nowhere near ready to be built. But DeLorean had a solution for that too, and it took him to the very other side of the UK, to Norfolk, the home of Lotus.
Wanting his car to be as sharp to drive as it was to look at, DeLorean turned to the best in the business. Lotus boss, 7-time Formula One Constructors Champion, Colin Chapman.
Colin Chapman had built up Lotus. It was selling cars in every country in the world. There were high-performance sports cars, which were acclaimed worldwide. And Colin had achieved everything that John DeLorean wanted to be. So he knew that if Colin Chapman took on the job and said that he could do it, he would do it.
Chapman was soon to learn, though, that while DeLorean had been busy selling his cutting-edge sports car dream, the actual prototype was woefully underdeveloped.
It turned out it had no space for a fuel tank, it had no space for a spare wheel. There were a number of different things that the basic packaging had to address.
As luck would have it, though, Chapman already had a car to base the DeLorean on. His world-class Lotus Esprit. And using its chassis and a modified fiberglass body, the new car began to take shape. But in order to achieve that all-essential car of the future look, DeLorean wanted that body clad in stainless steel.
In essence, it was building the same type of car that we were used to at Lotus, but you had to finish up with a set of panels that were all beautifully matched. That presented a huge problem in itself.
But against all the odds, John DeLorean and his team delivered. In January 1981, 40 years ago, the DeLorean landed.
Sleek and sharp-edged, and clothed in that beautiful bare stainless steel, the DeLorean looked truly space-age. It was an extraordinary achievement. To this day, no car has ever reached production faster. John DeLorean had realised his sports car dream. But there was just one problem.
It was terrible. So bad that sitting here right now, I don't quite know where to begin. But let's begin with the engine. DeLorean was going to use the rotary engine from the Mazda RX-7. Cost and expediency meant he didn't. Bad decision.
What he ended up with was a V6 that had been jointly developed by Renault, Peugeot and Volvo, producing a not very exotic 130 horsepower.
The thing weighed quite a lot because of the stainless steel panels, so performance was terrible. With this manual gearbox, it would do 0 to 60 in 9.5 seconds, but it was slower with the 3-speed automatic than most Americans wanted. Good Lord.
It wasn't a very refined car either. In throwing it together so fast, the engineers had to build the DeLorean with whatever they could lay their hands on.
The brakes come from a Ford Cortina, the glove box from a Volkswagen. The door locks, Austin Allegro, gear knob, Renault Fuego.
And then there's the handbrake.
Oh my God. It's terrible! Halfway through the corner, if you just back off, it wants to oversteer immediately. I mean, it's relatively controllable, but on the public road, good God, it's an accident waiting to happen.
And it would be an expensive accident at that.
In 1981, when this was launched in the US, it was the same price as a Porsche 911. DeLorean's dream of this affordable sports car, it was over before it had even begun. It was too expensive.
But instead of stopping to work on the car's flaws, in a move designed to show the world that all is well, DeLorean ramped up production. This was to prove a poor decision.
It was a bad time to be launching a new car. World markets, they'd gone to hell in a handbasket in '81. There was a massive oil crisis. There were people knifing each other in the gas queues in Los Angeles.
DeLorean sales are falling faster than most in a thoroughly depressed US car market.
It meant, of course, that we needed financial help again.
But the political landscape in the UK had changed. The DeLorean-backing Labour government was out, and the Conservatives were in, led by Margaret Thatcher.
To say that she was unenthusiastic about putting more money in would be an understatement. There was no way that any more money was coming from government, so it was really down to John, in the main, to find ways to raise investment.
And things were about to get worse. In a last-ditch attempt to keep the business afloat, DeLorean started to do deals with people you really don't want to do deals with.
The American John DeLorean.
In court this morning, John DeLorean was...
In October 1982, in a Los Angeles hotel room, John DeLorean was arrested in an FBI drug sting. Apparently doing a deal to shift 25 kilos of cocaine.
In the factory, there was a mix of disillusionment that he could possibly have done such a thing, but there was also this secondary element of many of them considering John to be the equivalent of Robin Hood, the saviour. He was prepared to do anything to salvage their job.
At his trial 2 years later, DeLorean pleaded that he was a victim of FBI entrapment. He was found not guilty, but the damage had been done.
Carmaker John DeLorean has been cleared of all charges against him at the end of his drug trafficking trial in Los Angeles.
Having built just 9,000 cars, the DeLorean Motor Company was dead.
And then a year after DeLorean's trial, this happened.
What's this?
Back to the Future was a global blockbuster. The time-travelling DeLorean's Flux capacitor and flaming tire trails made it an instant Hollywood superstar.
88 miles per hour! This is, for me, the ultimate film star car.
So, why choose the DeLorean?
Well, to use the immortal words of Dr. Emmett Brown, if you're going to make a time machine out of a car, why not do it with some style?
Ironically, had Back to the Future arrived a bit sooner in the space-time continuum, it might actually have saved the DeLorean.
But you know what, when you're driving this car, none of it really matters because it's instantly recognisable. Even 40 years after it was launched, people know exactly what it is. It's the time machine.
The most recognisable film car of all.
I tell you. I'm a Back to the Future obsessive. I must watch them every other week with one of my kids. 88 miles an hour was the number that just lodged in all of our heads. And there's that famous speedometer. And of course it only goes to 85. I've never understood why they did that. And that might have been that for the DeLorean story. The car and its creator destined to fade into obscurity.
This most famous of cars will go down in history as a victim of bad luck, bad timing, and a bad boy boss. Perhaps John DeLorean did build a car that would live forever, just not quite the way he imagined.